What you guys got, another video here for you. Is 2026 finally the year of the Linux desktop? That's what we're going to be taking a look at today. You hear those sort of declarations every year from the Linux community. The year of the Linux desktop is finally arrived. I've heard that for over 30 years and it's still being talked about today. So you can see Linux market share is pretty stable. I can hide all of this and just take a look at the unknown and also the Linux market share right here. And of course, it goes up and down by so small margins because obviously people come and go to that operating system. Now, the unknown section might be a section where people will claim that they're all Linux users that are using unknown Linux distributions and they are not registered. And that's simply not true. Now, Linux is the same as it's always been. Yes, it has gotten better. KD Plasma is doing really well right now and it's on the rise. And for those kids playing along at home, on the stat counter, unknown refers to web visits whose operating system's OS, browser or device information cannot be identified, often due to privacy settings, VPNs, Tor browsing and also ad blockers, or even highly customized obscure systems. And you can see the common reasons for unknown traffic is privacy tools, VPNs, private browsing models and things like that. So these will be blocked and they won't take a reading from those, or it will just give an unknown reading. Now that doesn't necessarily mean they're all Linux operating systems that are causing these unknown statistics, and this is what these results are. It can be AI bots, it can be tracking code issues, it can be modified systems, and these can be obviously Linux distributions as well, or niche operating systems like Amiga OS and other types of operating systems that are just not being registered. This also could be a lot of companies in the UK and around the world that are blocking a lot of these statistics from being read. And this is because the firewall settings on companies, strict corporations, have these banks, solicitors and other companies all around the world. And this will come under the unknown bracket. So for a lot of Linux community users, they like to claim it's the unknown and this is the stats for Linux, and it's just simply not the case. Yes, some of them will be, but only a small percentage. Now, Linux has been doing pretty well. And this is pretty common. Believe it or not, it's nothing new. This has happened before. And the reason why it's happened before is because normally this happens when end of life of an operating system like Windows 10 in this case, and you get a lot of interest from people that are now starting to worry about what they're going to do with their operating system. And Windows 10 has been a major problem for a lot of people, and they just don't know what to do with their old systems. And there's millions of them. Actually millions of computers that are not compatible with Windows 11. Now, some people might not have the money to buy a brand new computer. So what they will do is they'll use Windows 10 up until the point where end of support comes along. And then what they will do is they might even try Linux out because it's free and it's open source and it will be supported and there will be updates for that system. And this is what a lot of people will generally do. A majority of these, believe it or not, will end up going back to Windows. The small portion of them will stay behind and stay with Linux. These are the people that are basically saying, I switched to Linux a couple of months ago and it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. And that's because they are a light user. They just browse the internet and do a bit of email, and they can just literally use Linux for that. And it's not been an issue for them. But the real problems for Linux have been there for many, many years. And we'll go through those quickly. One of them is Adobe. Adobe still doesn't support Linux. Now, Adobe is a major player in the computer industry. A lot of businesses use Adobe, and a lot of home users will use Photoshop, Illustrator, and a lot of the other tools that come along with Adobe Suite. So basically, they're just not supported and you can't use them. Yes, they do have tools like GIMP and other types of tools which you can use. But most people are trained in that industry for that particular type of software. And even a lot of home users will use Adobe products, and they are skilled in Adobe products. And yet now they've got to start switching over to use an inferior, that's right, an inferior piece of software like GIMP compared to the Adobe suite, which is offered to you at a cost. So yes, you can adjust and train yourself to start using other software like GIMP, but a lot of people just don't want to. Microsoft Office just doesn't support Linux. And that is another problem. A lot of people are so used to Microsoft Office like Word and Excel and all these other ones. Yes, you can use LibreOffice, and a lot of people just simply don't want to change. And whether you like it or not, Linux is a compromise. You're going to have to compromise, and a lot of people don't want to do that. The NVIDIA driver problems still plague Linux today. It's a major issue, and if you've got an NVIDIA graphics card and you're using NVIDIA graphics drivers, they are going to be causing you issues. Also, new hardware. If you've got a brand new computer and you're trying to install Linux, it doesn't always play well with Linux. As much as they would like to say it's simple and easy to set up and use, it's just not. And you're going to end up with a really disappointing experience. Now, these problems are really big problems. The other big problem is Linux is an open source operating system, and it's led to a variety of distributions, or distros if you want to call them, and this fragmentation of the desktop Linux is often seen as a double-edged sword, because yes, it's great that you get the opportunity to create new things and new distros that you're using every day, but on the other hand, but it also can cause a lot of challenges for software compatibility, and this is where the problem comes in. And it's because there's over probably 600 active distributions with another 500 in development, according to this website. Now, you can imagine that's a lot of operating systems that are out there floating around. And of course, these all need to be supported. And this is where compatibility issues come in. The NVIDIA driver problems will arise, and a lot of other issues as well along the way. So yes, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. On one side, you get a lot of choice, and on the other side, you're sort of creating a bit of Achilles heel for the operating system because it's just too much choice. And again, it depends on who you ask. There's going to be people saying they love that about Linux, and there's going to be obviously the other side of people that say it's just too much, and this is what's hurting Linux. Again, it just depends on who you're asking. Now, we all know that Linux has come on leaps and bounds over the years, and again, it's still got some major issues with anti-cheats. So games like Battlefield 6 just simply won't work, and there's a lot of other games that don't work. So there's a lot of other options available out there like Bassite and CatchyOS, and you've got SteamOS and a lot of these other ways of playing games with Linux now. And of course, these are not perfect. You know, some people that play first-person shooters are going to run into issues with input lag and things like that. If you're playing something like The Witcher or something like that, and it works perfectly fine on there, that's going to be great. But competitive gaming is still a bit of an issue with Linux. And that is a big bulk of the Windows users. And this leads to people dual booting Windows with Linux. And this is so they can play their games on Windows, and then when they want to use the main system for all their privacy concerns, they will use Linux. And it's not a bad idea, but it just goes to show you that Linux is just not quite there if you're having to do that. The other thing that some people will do is install a virtual machine inside Linux and run Windows inside there so they can use all the software they like using, like Adobe and Office and all these other bits of software they've been used to using over the years that just simply don't work inside Linux. And if you've been a hardcore Windows user for many, many years, this can be very problematic for a lot of people to transition over to a new operating system and then have to completely leave all of their software behind because it simply doesn't work on Linux. So lots of your favorite software just simply won't work on Linux. So let's talk about why this is happening right now, why we're seeing a boom in sort of Linux activity. And it's everywhere, believe you me. If you search on YouTube for I switched to Linux, millions are switching to Linux, companies are switching to Linux, Windows is done, Linux is the new OS, I've tried Linux for 30 days, Microsoft pushed me to Linux, you name it. Linux now plays all your games. Really? These are the sorts of videos that are being pushed. And the problem is, it's all nonsense. You've even got a lot of big YouTubers jumping on the bandwagon like Jay's 2 Cents, PewDiePie, Gamers Nexus, Linus Tech Tips, Rob Braxman. You know, there's tons of them out there that are creating this hysteria or Linux frenzy, you might want to call it. And of course, it's like a success for the Linux community because some of these big YouTubers are now so-called using it. But a lot of them are content creators and they do it for the views. So why don't people stick with Linux after dumping Windows 11 or Windows? Well, for their daily driver, a lot of them do stick with Linux. If you don't use printers or have minimal hardware issues and all of your hardware works, then you should be okay. You should be fine. If you don't use Adobe products or Office or any of the things that I was talking about earlier, maybe you have a Radeon card in your system, you should have plain sailing and it should be fine. Linux will work fine for you. But if you're going against the grain and trying to do all of the other things, this is when the problems will start. And you'll probably end up ditching Linux and going back to Windows like a lot of people end up doing. And you even get the people that will use Linux and have one foot in Windows because they know Linux just can't do it all for them. And they will end up using both. But they will still hate on Windows and trash Windows even though they're still using it because Linux just doesn't cut the mustard for them. But they won't talk about that. They just talk about, how Linux is so great and Windows is so junk. And this is what you'll see on YouTube. There's tons and tons and tons of people creating this content every day. It's like literally having Linux burnout. It really is. It's overwhelming. It's like a Linux cult. It really is. The users end up becoming toxic and rude, and they're all over the internet, become trolls inside the comments section. They've even got bots posting on Discord servers. We had one the other day, which was a bot, which was trying to promote Linux Mint. I mean, it's getting bad. It's on forums, it's on blogs, it's on the comments section, you name it. Everywhere I go, Reddit posts, it's just Linux, 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 Linux. It's just everywhere. And it's not all good because most of it is spreading hate for Windows in the hope to get people to join Linux. It happens on every Windows end of life. The majority of these people that are doing this every day are hypocrites. They are literally using Windows themselves because they know they can't do everything on Linux. It's a fact. And that's just basically it. And of course, if you are one of those people that are having to sign into a Windows account just to use a piece of software that you need to use, or to play a game that you need to play because it doesn't work on Linux, then what are you hating for? Because you're just being a hypocrite because you're doing it yourself. So I don't understand any of that nonsense myself. So every year is the year of Linux. Been hearing it for years and it's never going to change. So I don't care what you choose to use. Choose your poison, use it, and stop with the stupidness. It's that simple. So what's the future for Linux? Well, I think by the time Windows 10 reaches its absolute end, which will be sometime later this year, unless Microsoft extend for another year, then I can see the percentage getting to around about 6%, maybe a maximum of 8% it might get to. And that's a lot of users going over. And that's because Windows 10 would have finally ended. But we'll have to wait and see what the end result would be. Remember, a lot of those will leave Linux again and go back to Windows because they just won't be able to get on with it. But there'll be a few people that stick around for Linux. Remember, these are just opinions. Everyone has one, you know, at the end of the day. Anyway, with that said, my name has been Brian from briteccomputers.co.uk. Just want to say a quick shout out to all my YouTube members who have joined my YouTube members group. Appreciate the support. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Keep it civil, and I shall see you in the next video. Bye for now.